Everyone dreams of living an uncommon life, and the best asset you have to achieve your dreams is you. Welcome to the Uncommon Wealth Podcast. We're going to introduce you to people who are living uncommonly. We're also going to give you some tools and strategies for building wealth and for pursuing an uncommon path that is uniquely right for you.
Hello and welcome everybody to another episode of the Uncommon Wealth Podcast, where I'm your host, Philip Ramsey. Today we have a guest that is very uncommon. I'm going to ask him why he's so uncommon, but it's Jim Sheils with Southern Impression Homes. He's down in Florida. He has dodged the hurricane. So Jim, welcome to the show, man.
Hey, thanks for having me, Philip. Yeah, it's nice to be sitting here today, just post Helene, post Milton. It's been a big hurricane year, and they've been calling this one for a long time. But we're building, we do our venture in 12 different markets, and we came out of it basically with no damage.
Wow. Praise the Lord. Because there's a lot of people that haven't been. And I feel like it's getting worse. Like I had a friend that had a father that's had, or actually parents that have a house in Florida. And he said for 25 years, they haven't had a problem. But the last two hurricanes, the last couple of years have got them. So, I mean, you're getting lucky.
It does. And it comes in waves. And look, here's one thing I can tell you. Some of the most attractive, valuable property in the world is where? It's waterfront.
It sure is.
It's oceanfront. And you take a risk with that type of property. I live 4 seconds to the beach. Right, and the little barrier island I'm on, you go 10 houses down near the intercoastal. It's a risk you take, and you stay well insured. And there are ways that even when you're in hurricane zone, it's not foolproof, but there are ways to down your risks. And one of them is, most investment properties that you work in, you're probably not buying oceanfront or waterfront anyway, because you can't make the numbers work. So that's one thing alone that does help.
Sure. Okay. Well, let's just quick introduce yourself. What makes you uncommon? What is your business? How did you get to where you're at? Just give us a high level flyover. Probably won't be able to go into too much detail. No,
that's okay. Jim Sheils. I've been a real estate investor for 25 years. What makes me uncommon is my wife and I are happily married. We have 5 children, a combination of adopted and biological. We have done a lot of road schooling where we've traveled to different areas in the world with our kids to teach them, and kind of had a more unconventional adventure with family life most people don't have, while running, a real estate investment company that used to do bulk foreclosure rehabs, but then went into new construction about 10 years ago, partnered up with my now partner, and he's, a powerhouse in our industry, and it's been great. And so that's been kind of an uncommon adventure. We also have a best-selling family book, #1 Wall Street Journal seller, called The Family Board Meeting. So I'd say, not all real estate investors care about family. A lot of the ones that we work with do, but that's been trying to be a core value of mine to live by. And it's nice to be able to work with investors that share that same thing.
Yeah, no, I love it, because at the end of the day, there's always this work-life balance. And at the end of the day, it's just like life balance. And you just gotta be able to manage and juggle all of that. And so I do like having that principles kind of bleed over into your family, of a family boardroom and writing a book about that. So let's start with the real estate side of it, and then we'll go to kind of the family boardroom side of things, because it's just so powerful. So let's start. So what got you into real estate at the beginning? Was that your first thing? Did you ever have a desk job? Tell me all about it.
Yeah, I graduated college, which was not for me. I'm glad I went. It was more.
But you graduated.
So I did graduate, which was something. And so that was an accomplishment. But if I would be lying to you, Philip, if I said the things I learned in school helped me with my entrepreneur career. It just didn't. So I'm very 50-50 on college, whether it's for me, my friends, my kids, I'm 50-50. But for me, it was more of a proving ground. I went into corporate America, into pharmaceutical advertising for 2 years. And it was more boring than it sounds. And I remember almost biting my own hands off doing a sales pamphlet for a drug on irregular bowel syndrome. And I'm like, I can't do this. And I left. I left the Northeast and moved out to California for a sales job. It fell through. And that's when I really started studying, what do I want to do? And I had been, I remember challenge to say, always do something for yourself. Have the courage while you're young and can starve yourself. Go after something for you. Be your own boss. And so I did. And I was looking at everything from franchises to, different biz ops, and kept coming back to this real estate investing. And it just made sense to me. I like the tangibility, the levers. And I also read a quote that 8 out of 10 millionaires in the US at that time, we're talking 27 years ago, made their money in real estate. And I like those odds. I'm like, man,
right.
I enjoy this. I like the tangibility. I like kind of the things I'm learning. And so that was my start.
That's huge. So what college did you graduate from?
University of Scranton. So if you watch The Office, yes, that's where I went to school.
That's pretty sweet. Okay. And so you started getting into this real estate game, but I was also pharmaceutical background. So I get it, man. I get it. And it's like the golden handcuffs, but like those golden handcuffs aren't for me. So we're going to get out in the real world, and you start diving into real estate. One, you start seeing the history. A lot of people are successful with it. What year was that you were starting to get into it?
That was 1999.
Okay.
98, 99.
So interest rates back then were what?
My first property that I bought as a new investor, so that hit me up a little bit, and had good credit though. But my first property that I bought, my interest rate was 9.125.
Right. And is that 30-year?
30-year. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So different than today, right?
Much higher. Yep.
But I do think that's interesting, because a lot of people, I like to just at least talk about the interest rate. And it is post or pre 2008, before the collapse.
Oh yeah.
So it is higher, but it's also something that you made be worthwhile. So I think a lot of people, and a lot of our, I think, clients are looking into real estate and kind of thinking like, well, I'll get into it when interest rates are down. You would have jumped up for joy if you saw what the interest rates were now back then. So you made it work. I just wanted to make that quick point. And then we can kind of move on. But so the first property that you bought, where were you at in your marriage? I'm going to try to interweave all of this.
Jamie and I didn't meet till I moved to Florida. So I was single and starving. Single and starving at the time. Okay.
Who was mentoring you at that point?
I had a couple of different mentors. I had someone of my parents' friend back in New Jersey who had done some real estate deals. And then I had a really unique beginning, because I got in to Robert Kiyosaki's original real estate investing classes.
Oh, that's cool.
And I had some success, fixing a few houses and selling them. And I made friends with someone on the staff. They invited me back to staff. And I met a guy named Keith Cunningham there who was speaking. And Keith Cunningham was a major inspiration behind Rich Dad, Poor Dad. He's worked with Tony Robbins for years. Ran his wealth mastery. And so Keith mentored me for about 5 years. Every 90 days, I'd fly to Austin, Texas and just sit in a room and just, when you have a good mentor, they challenge you and they hold you accountable. And sometimes it feels great and sometimes it feels horrible.
You hate it. Yeah.
But that was my start.
Okay. What do you think the biggest thing he taught you in his years of mentoring you?
I'm going to say this one because it keeps coming up. If you making money is supposed to be boring. He's like, if you need excitement, go get chased by the bulls in Spain, jump out of an airplane. I get it. He's like, but the problem with entrepreneurs is they get something going and they get good at it. They get on the inside track. They get a rhythm. And then they feel like they got to run in 7 different directions, complicate things, and become a freshman again. They've just reached the senior class. He says you're supposed to get it where it's just cranking and moving, and you're able to pivot easy. And we forget that as sometimes high flying, high energy, problem solving, challenging entrepreneurs.
Yeah,
and that was great advice, because simple real estate. And the more I've gone back to it and kept a simple focus on just what niche am I focused on, what am I going deep into, has got me better results. But also, I didn't want to be an entrepreneur that has to work 95 hours a week at this age. I mean, I just turned 50. I want to be with my family. You know, we've been lucky enough to take some long adventures. You know, the last 2 years, we lived a few months out of the year in Costa Rica, you know, to work and play from there. If you overcomplicate things, you can't do things like that. And so that was a lesson he taught me. And that was, you know, I was a youngster at that time. I was in my early 20s, and I'm glad it finally it took hold. I tried to follow it.
Yeah, no, I think that's a lot of truth. Because Uncommon Wealth Partners and Uncommon Wealth is really a lot of people are starting to dive into their own core values, their own beliefs, their own skills, the way they're gifted. And it's exciting at first. And then all of a sudden, this drudge of, we're not going as fast as we want, right? And it shouldn't be that fast. So I think that's really a good lesson for another key point. So great point. Okay, so got your first investment property. What do you do next? You get in, you revamp it, remodel it.
Yeah, I hit a home run on my first one. I bought a 3-family house in Lompoc, California. Don't want her. Gentleman had passed. You know, his family sold it at a really good price. Went in, fixed it up, moved around the tenants. Two of the units were vacant. I just fixed them up and raised the rents from where they were, and boom, I had a home run. I think I had it reappraised 5 months later, and the equity was 2 times what my salary had been the year before.
Wow!
I was like, dang, this has some legs to it. Right. So I don't know, it was a lucky or a curse, but I got, you know, I had a home run on my first real estate deal, and so that was like, okay, I can do more. Now I had plenty of strikeouts after that.
Yeah. That's about that. The first one. It's like the first good golf shot.
Was a home run. Yeah, that property I sold to 1031 exchange into Florida stuff years ago for 5 times what I bought it for. So
wow. Did you do all the remodeling, or did you contract that out?
It's a great, you know what, Philip? I did the first remodel I ever did, that one. I'll never forget. I had a surfing buddy contractor who, you know, said, yeah, I'll help you out on the weekends and show you. And he was my buddy, luckily, but he was like, oh, dude, you are not good at this. Like this, I'm not. And that's where it's so funny. I mean, 2 of my sons are very mechanically inclined, and I'm not. So people expect, oh, you've done 1,000 rehabs. You're so good at that. I'm horrible at it. Now, looking at assessing it and filling in the pieces for what needs to be done. But I'm not a good rehabber. I don't have that mechanical inclination. So you wouldn't want me fixing your roof or your AC but I know how to find the right roofer and to get the AC and to look at, okay, let's change this about the house and add this and landscape this. But doing it myself, I did that first rehab, and I knew I had to change or this was going to end really quick.
Yeah. I appreciate your honesty. A lot of it's just knowing your skill set and then working around it. Yeah. We all got our own faults. That's good.
Absolutely.
Okay, so it sounds like you didn't sell it right away. Did you refinance it, take the equity out, and then go do it again?
Yeah, see, that's the secret of wealth, that you plant seeds and you let them take hold, you let them grow, and then with discipline, you pull money off of that property, normally through a refinance. Yep. And yes, you could buy Rolexes or go to Vegas or just blow it, or you could do the boring thing and put it into 2-3 more properties. Right. And that's how we really grew the business and the portfolio, was doing that. And it's such a straightforward formula that people, first of all, they don't believe that can work. Secondly, they're too impatient. Yeah, but I have to do it. I said, man, please stop looking at the next 14 months. Look at the next 7 to 10 years. Yeah. We'll just take that approach with real estate, like so many people before you. It's amazing the opportunities that can open up.
Right. Okay, so when does Southern Impression Homes start? Not then.
So left California, came to Florida in about 04.
But why did you leave California? We've skipped that. Why?
Okay.
Come on now.
I'm not a fan of their landlord laws.
I hear you.
I don't encourage the landlord laws. Beautiful state, some nice people. Landlord laws were horrible. And by that time, there was such a frenzy occurring I was in a place called Bakersfield, California. Johnny Carson made fun of it. It's like the armpit of California. Okay. Again, really nice people. It's just a hot, dry area. It looks like the Midwest. And people were coming down from San Fran, up from LA, and buying properties for, I'll never forget it, $70,000 to $80,000 above appraised value. No appraised value, no appraisal contingency. Numbers weren't making sense. And so I wasn't that smart, but I'm like, this doesn't make sense. I can't keep doing what I'm doing here.
Yeah.
And we heard about a little place on the northeast coast. I had family here of Florida called Jacksonville, Florida. And they said, look up the numbers that you look for. It's here. And I found that Jacksonville, Florida was the most affordable large coastal city in the U.S. by far, like hands down. There was nothing close. I said, oh, that's interesting. And I wanted to be warm and by the water anyway, because I'm a surfer and I love the beach. And so that's why we made the move. And California was, again, there's things I loved about it, but it was easy from a business aspect to stay goodbye. One of the biggest rules is now, especially, fast forward, Philip, 20, well, that wasn't quite 25 years from when I started, but, let's go 20 years.
Yeah.
You got to look at landlord laws. You got to pay attention to landlord laws for your individual state, because it is detrimental. I've watched it happen to some friends in certain states, especially through the pandemic. If you can't collect rent for 14, 16 months,
yeah,
how do you survive? I'm seeing even the big guys that we've built for suck wind, larger institutions, family offices. So I say there's things you want to look for, but one of them underlying is, does that state allow you as a landlord to protect your assets and to get people out in a fair amount of time if they don't pay rent?
Right. That's good. So you get to Florida.
Went into, did some fix and flips, got into some properties here in Jacksonville, Florida that were the worst decision of my life. The funny thing is you go from being, the hotshot senior in California to the freshman here. Oh, I didn't think the neighbor was that bad. The condition was that bad. Well, some of those houses I had to sit on for 12 years almost.
Oh, gosh.
Such bad areas. And, and those were lessons. But one thing great that happened, which I thought was initially going to bankrupt me, was '08. But what happened with '08 is, that was a really painful time. But you remember the bottom fell out.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Pricing. And I had always kept a great reputation with my investors. I had always protected them through anything. And so the bottom fell out so quickly. I had people from the different, mastermind groups and real estate events I was coming to, hey, we want to start buying. There's a buying opportunity. And they hire me to get into this, foreclosure market. And I built relationships from the top REO brokers in Jacksonville, and we just bought bulk foreclosures. I'd renovate them. I'd either on-sell it to an investor or keep them for myself. We did a blend of that, and then we built up, the company well with that. By now my family's involved, and I got to tell you, and I write about this in our latest book, that model sounds great, and it made me wealth, but it bankrupted my time. Didn't want to do that, and it started to even look worse about a decade ago, because the secret was out. '08 was completely done. There was no more shadow inventory like they talked about. Everything was getting overbid, and my now partner came to me and said, "Hey, what if we tried to build our own properties instead of finding old ones to renovate?" That's a terrible idea. I'm a rehabber,
Right.
Poo-pooed it. And he convinced, luckily so, because it's a way bigger scale than we could ever go. And also, there's so many things that have bought back my time with this model. We had about 5 people on our team. Well, now I'm part of a team of 140. I'm a partner in this bigger company. And I only handle one thing. And I have so many more people in place, and I'm not fighting over the same thing. And there was a barrier to entry, but we have better funding. We have our own in-house financing for our investors now. We're building from scratch, which I can tell you has gotten us into better areas, but also things like this, Philip, with the hurricane, new construction, you have to build differently as of 2004 or newer. Instead of building at 2 feet above sea level in certain markets we were in, like in 1950, you now have to build at 14 feet. So
right.
All these things I gripe and complain about until a hurricane hits and we don't have any damage. And I'm like,
right.
I got to stop complaining.
Right. Oh, that's good. Okay. Where were you in your relationship with your wife at this point? Like, when did you meet her? Obviously, it was in Florida, but when
we met her, my wife and I met in 2010, married in 2011. She was divorced with full custody of 2 young boys. She had married her high school boyfriend right out of college. Awful situation that she talks very openly about. It's been part of our story. Alcohol abuse. She stood up for herself, got out, got full custody, and I met her a few years later. And so we hit it off. But here I am, Philip, instant dad. I had always been involved in different kids' activities and
Holy
things.
cow.
Big family.
Full throttle.
Yeah, it was full throttle. And then these two little boys hit it off. They asked me to adopt them when I married Jamie. And
Wow.
of course. And so it was great. But here I am post 2008, we could have bankrupt us, but we're on our way back up. We're helping a lot of people, building a lot of successful portfolios, but I'm running 2 real estate businesses. And here's this beautiful Montessori principal that, that I fell in love with right away, and her 2 boys, and we're an instant family. So we're again, this is where I like when this started to take stride. Like I also now have a 10-year-old, a 7-year-old, and a 3-year-old. So we've continued to grow on the family. But that was a lot of how am I going to do this better? Because now it's not just working,
right?
For just myself or a wealth goal. It's like I want to have my time. I want to have I don't want to miss this. That's why our I don't know if you can see it for here, but. Our family education business is called 18 Summers, because a mentor of mine.
That's all you get.
He said, look, the stats show it. The average person will spend about 85% of the time they ever have with their child by the end of the 18th summer.
Yep.
Take advantage of it and know that you could cheat that. You could get more time if you do the first 18 years right. They're going to want to come back for more. There's going to be more of a foundation. And so that always stuck with me. I'd say it inspired me and haunted me, Philip.
Yeah.
Because being a young, impressionable guy that got into these real estate events early, man, I saw some really big names that you and I would know with huge balance sheets, big followings, huge crowds cheering from them, and then you would get behind stage and their life was in shambles. And one of the saddest things when I say shambles, they had basically little to no relationship with their family.
Yes. Isn't it? They're on top of the mountain with nobody to see the beauty.
Yeah, their kids weren't talking to them. Their wife was living down the street, and it was just kind of we're staying together for image, and it scared me because I want to be clear on this. I was like, man, I'm not the smartest guy, but I am smart enough to know that could be me. For sure. I might fall into that same thing and start growing, and so there was a certain there was a certain different path that I tried to take that may have cost me money in the short term, but I think it's created a lot of better things in the long term.
Right. Yeah. I always say like, it's not worth it if you're on top of this mountain by yourself. Like
I've never heard that, but that is spot on.
Yeah. And I just think like keeping your family and your marriage a priority, because it's easy to focus on the kids and focus on your business, and just know or take it for granted that you have a spouse that's like right there, lockstep. And so
she's been incredible. So the things that we've been through of building the family, of anything from, health setbacks to deaths in the family to overcoming past traumas to, hosting our own family events to growing a real estate portfolio together, helping others do the same. It's been a hell of a ride. Never perfect, right? But so meaningful. And, we're just excited for the next 10 years now.
Oh, that's cool. How'd you and your wife meet? I don't know if you said that.
No, I didn't. So I was, so you'll laugh at this. So I went out to dinner with a buddy of mine. I'd been surfing all day. He's like, come out for a meal. I'm like, I don't know. I'm tired. So I go, I meet him, and we're walking back from this little sushi place in this little village town up near Jacksonville, this little beach town. And he goes, let's go into this bar. And it's this little brew pub that I had heard was a nice place. And we walk in, it looks like a bad wedding, right? It looks like it's like we're crashing a wedding. There's all ages dancing to this band. And literally I locked eyes with my wife. And it's pretty awesome because, I was completely sober and, I saw her and I was like, whoa. And we joke like, oh, were you looking at me or was I looking at you? I mean, the honest truth of which I won't tell you, I was definitely looking at you. But she was in there. It was her 28th birthday with her whole family. And so I met her whole family the first night because
nice.
Yeah. So, I was like either really courageous or stupid. I'm not sure which one I think it was.
Or in love, whatever.
Yeah, or in love. Or yeah, that's a good one too. But I walk up to her and her friend and I'm like, oh, they're trying to take a picture. I'm like, can I do that? Now, like I just said about rehabs, you don't want me touching your technology. I mean, you saw my setup problems here. Like they asked me to take a picture. I think I got like a picture of like her friend's shoulder. But that was a joke later. But yeah, that's how we met. And we talked for about 5 minutes. And she had said, we just had a really good conversation. And you know, I think that I was in the right state of mind and frame because she's a very beautiful girl. And she just said, I've never given my number out. But if you want to call me, you can. And if you met my wife, she was shy and coming out of this and, you know,
right. PTSD.
Yeah. And she just, and so, and we've talked every day since. Every day since. So it was pretty cool stuff. So
how long you been married now?
We've been married, how many years now? 15 years now? Maybe 14 years now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. That's great. That's very cool. Okay. So you get married, things are going well. You're rehabbing or you're doing the deal. '08 hits. Now you start changing your
we're past '08 now. We're past it. So
you've changed your business completely to now doing new builds.
New builds, yep.
And then what's next? Sorry.
You know, there's always challenges. As we started new builds, we're like, gosh, this works great. But what we had found too is we started to build like here in Jacksonville. Jacksonville is our hub market.
Yep.
We had a decision to make that if we stay in Jacksonville, then we're going to have to start building properties in areas we don't want to be.
Right.
And I have a rule that was taught to me, original mentor ever. Can you walk down the street at 8:00 on a Friday night without concerns? I still listen to that. That makes sense to me because I've tried it their way. I know some people do well there. It's just not for me. I've gotten slaughtered there. And so we had to make decisions to go outside of Jacksonville. We had to go through all sorts of things where, you know, we now are a self-builder. So we're our own builder in all our markets now. But how do we become that? Well, we became that because we went out to Ocala, great market. And we, you know, had a several $1 million judgment against a contractor that went belly up, that didn't do his numbers, could have bankrupted us. We held it, we covered it, we got all the builds done for our investors, and then we continued to grow. So these things are always happening when you're building. You know, the hurricanes. Is Florida going to last? The pandemic. I mean, what's going to happen? I'll tell you during the pandemic too, and this is to the credit of my partner. Beginning of 2020, when all that was going down, we had gone to build to rent, and no one knew what this was going to happen. It was literally with all my real estate friends, real estate's going 08 times 10. And so we talked about it, and we said, we're either going to be really right or really wrong. But we decided to try to be really right, and we bought over 20 million in land positions in Florida right in the beginning of 2020. Wow. Now, you know what happened to land costs in those next 2 years.
Oh, man.
And so now we have enough land we have over 5,000 lots that we're going to be building out in Florida, a mixture of single family, duplex, and quads. And remember, it's not building costs. Yeah, they went up ridiculous and you have to work on that. But if you don't get into the land right, almost everything else.
Right. It goes up belly up pretty quick.
Yeah, you can't make the numbers work. So we feel so lucky we made that. But again, it was a risk we had to take. And there was some educated risk to it, but it was a risk we have to take that was pretty scary. And again, for anyone listening here, you know, you don't have to build the Taj Mahal your first deal, but you got to have the courage to go into that first duplex. I always say that, you know. And
multifamily, right?
Yeah. We build single family, duplex, and quads. We do an array of all residential real estate so we can get you that good residential financing, but we do.
Yeah, right. Yeah. That's good. And now do you help people do that? Like, client can call you and be like, hey, I want to step into this, and you can get them into that.
Yeah. So what we do is we're on a continual build cycle. You don't build pre-construction with us like, hey, Philip, give me a deposit and I'll give you a house in 10 months. No, we build on our own dime. And so you can close on a new construction home that's just finishing within 30 days.
Oh, wow.
And not only that, so you have to put up your deposit, obviously, like you're buying a house. But we have now our own in-house financing. So right now, and again, this is another part of the story, but we were partially acquired by a big group called Sumitomo. Sumitomo stepped in and bought a piece of our business. because they like build to rent and they liked Florida. They're 330 years old, out of Japan. They're an absolute powerhouse. Warren Buffett is heavily invested in one of their conglomerates. But like Warren Buffett's style, they give us autonomy to run the business and full funding. So we don't have to raise money to buy land anymore. We have zero bank debt, which many builders cannot say.
Yeah, that's right.
They've given us the green light. And also now with the balance sheet that we have, we're able to work with a few banks where we can pre-buy mortgages. It's called a builder forward commitment. And you have to have a certain level of security in your business to do that. But we're able to now buy these mortgages up front, Philip, for our people.
That's cool.
It's 3.75%.
Holy cow.
Right now. So we're cutting the market by about 3% on what it is. And that's 10-year fixed, 30-year AM.
Wow. That's crazy. And then how do you get renters? Are they already rented? Or
some of our properties are pre-rented. Others, we have our average days of what it takes to rent in different markets, but we have management. We manage 95% of what we build. Okay. People can use their own management if they want, but most people go to us. Normally with our incentive programs, like right now, we're offering two free years of monthly management, free management for the first 2 years. So, it's hard to say no. And again, we were in management before we were in building. That's how my partner and I met. He was a property manager, him and his father, and I had left California, and I've hired and fired 4 property managers.
Yeah, dude, they're hard to find good ones.
And it's a tough business. It's the worst part of the business, I think, but they started to take over my portfolio and did a better job than I did. And that's kind of how we got our start together, and then the building came next. But we always try to set up management in any market we build in before we start.
Okay, so when did the family board meeting book come out, and in all conjunction with all this?
Yeah, so that came out about 10 years ago.
Okay.
We just started, with meeting Jamie within the first few years. I'm like, man, I don't want to mess this up. I have these 2 boys. We're going on to have more kids. So many people had always said to me, I wish, I'd be at these events. And, it never just stays about real estate. It goes into relationship, personal development, purpose. And they're like, I'd get up and I'd have to speak. And I would just share what brought me on my journey. And it was never a straight line. People said, I'd love for my kids to hear this. So we just started to throw these kind of impromptu events, and people started coming to it. And the lessons we were sharing, a good friend of ours who's with a group called Strategic Coach, she said, you guys need to write a book. I said, I have no interest in writing a book about family. Our stories are kind of vulnerable and sensitive, first of all. I don't know if I want to put that out there. And secondly, I'm not a family therapist. I'm not a psychologist. And they're like, exactly. You're an entrepreneur that can relate. And so we wrote it. I think on the first edition, we're now on our 3rd edition. I think it was like $1,000, and we were putting it out. But 2 big podcasters who I didn't realize were big, because I was kind of like Forrest Gump, had seen me speak and invited me to come on their big podcasts, and the book just took off. And then the second, and then 3rd edition, where we got a real publisher, went to #1 on Wall Street Journal. And I say all that not to brag. It's because the family message is so resonated with people. It's not our writing. It's the story and the simple principles that we shared that, now we think there's probably over 200,000 families using this now, which is pretty special for us.
That is cool. Yeah, that's cool. What role is Jamie playing in your business, in the family board meetings, like all this stuff? Or does she just this is kind of more my wife, she just organizes the house, and that's a job that's more than I could, I can't pay you enough. You're
right. I agree. The feng shui of the house is unbelievable. So that is part of it. When we have some, two people to help with that, one thing Jamie will not give up on, she is the Montessori mom. I mean, she ran Waldorf and Montessori schools. She is kids are just magnetized to her. So she won't give up kid time, but we'll have other support in the house. And she's very involved in our kids' education. We're very involved with a small alternative school we help start for different ages in our town. But then she doesn't get involved in the bigger real estate business, but helps oversee our own portfolio. And the one thing that we determined, Philip, is, and I'm very proud of this, is, what is it? 80-something% of divorces are because of financial issues. Mm-hmm. She is very attuned and very involved in our finances. We both are. So every Thursday we sit down, we're going over things with our accountant, our bookkeeper to see where it's at. So we both understand where the money is. And she's very involved in that part because she has a good knack for it, first of all. And it's really good communication to know when things are great, when things are low, when things are okay. And, what should be our next move. And we make those decisions together. And it's worked so much better than the Lone Ranger approach.
Yeah, that's good. It's good. Jim, I love your Uncommon, man. This is awesome. So if our listeners want to hear more about you or the family board meeting, what would be the best way for them to reach out or just find out more information about you?
Yeah, go to jjplaybook.com. That's something that Jamie and I wrote up. We just had a second book come out, and it's USA Today bestseller. You guys can get the first 3 chapters free. And also some of our principles, what real estate path do we take? Why do we go from old to new construction? And just a pathway you might be able to follow for that. And not only success in the real estate, but success at home. So jjplaybook.com will be a great starting point with free information. And that's what I'd recommend.
Okay, that's good. Well, hey, thank you for your time. I appreciate just all the ways that you have used your gifts to impact other people. And I wish you the best of luck, man. Huge fan. Love it.
Thanks, Philip. Good being on here.
Yeah. You've been listening to the Uncommon Wealth Podcast. If you have any other questions, reach out to myself at uncommonwealth.com. And thank you for listening. Till next time, go be uncommon.
That's all for this episode, brought to you by Uncommon Wealth Partners. Be sure to visit uncommonwealth.com to learn more about our services. Don't miss an episode as we introduce you to inspiring people who are actively pursuing an uncommon life.